everyone, it's Daisy here. Welcome to today's video called Sailor Bespoke Pens Explained. The purpose of today's video is to introduce the term of Sailor Bespoke Pens and to kind of go over what exactly that means. If you've never heard that term before, don't worry. You'll know all about it at the end of this video. And to answer the question of why are some of these Sailor Bespoke pens so expensive and why some are a lot more expensive than others. So in this video, I'm just going to go over Sailor Bespoke pens really quickly, and then I'll be going over sort of a glossary of terms that will help you understand a discussion of these pens a little bit better. And then lastly, I do have some Sailor Bespoke pens here in front of me in these very beautiful boxes, and we will actually be looking at a few examples of some Sailor Bespoke pens at different price points that have different qualities to them and different things that make them special. So they are also at varying price points as a result of that. So I'm going to start just by talking about what exactly Sailor Bespoke pens are. Essentially, Sailor Bespoke pens, it's a term used here in North America by the Sailor North America distributor. So it only really applies to North America. And if you go outside of the US or Canada and you say like, I have this Sailor Bespoke pen, they might know the pen that you're talking about if you're going to like a pen collector, but they might not really understand what Sailor Bespoke means. So I just wanted to clarify that first. But essentially here in the US, Sailor Bespoke pens are basically just very, very limited pens. Oftentimes these are pens that are produced in quantities of less than 100 or maybe just a few hundred available worldwide. So they are very, very limited pens. And as soon as you hear limited pens, you're probably going to wonder why. Well, these pens are not mass produced. These pens are oftentimes handmade by artists, or in some cases, one pen might be handmade by just one artist. And so they have these handmade elements to them, either on the body of the pen, they have some handmade aspects, or they have a really, really special material to the barrel and the caps of the pens. Or lastly, they have some kind of special nib. And anytime you think of like special nib, when you're thinking of Sailor, you probably want to think about Naginata-Togi nibs or any of other Sailor specialty grinds. So these are some of the reasons why the Sailor Bespoke pens are so limited to begin with. Here in the US and in Canada, there are actually just 5 shops that are bespoke pen shops. And here at Yoseka, we are very happy to be included in one of the 5 shops that have Sailor Bespoke pens. And we were actually just introduced into the program last year in 2023. So that was a big honor for us. And honestly, it's been something that we had been working towards ever since we first started carrying Sailor pens back in like 2020. So we're very happy to be able to get some of these Sailor Bespoke pens. So basically, if you're familiar with fine pens, art pens, Urushi pens, lacquer pens, Pilot is a big one that has a lot of Namiki pens. And then for Sailor here in North America, if you are looking for an art pen, like an Urushi pen or a Maki-e pen, or a pen that's like very, very limited, special, collectible in that way, you're really going to be looking at a Sailor Bespoke pen. So that is essentially what Sailor Bespoke means. It boils down to these are very limited pens that are often handmade by a small number of artists in Japan. They have special body materials to them, or they have a special nib on them that makes them very, very unique, or they have a combination of some of those things. And every time they have a combination of one of those things, that's why the price tag on these pens will tend to go up as well. So I hope now that you understand what Sailor Bespoke pens are. And now I'm going to go over a glossary of terms. Welcome to class, everybody. So I'm going to be going over a glossary of terms today that will help you better understand Sailor Bespoke pens. When you read some of these product descriptions or just read about some of these pens, I think some of the The terms can be a little intimidating if you don't know what they are, but as I explain some of these terms, I hope that you can begin to sort of understand, and just know that every time you hear one of these words, it just makes the pen a little bit more special. It adds a layer of complexity to producing this pen, and usually these techniques and the glossary of terms speaks to certain techniques that make this pen hard to produce and therefore very, very limited and time consuming to make as opposed to a mass produced fountain pen. Okay, so the first term that I'm going to go over is ebonite. Ebonite, if you've been reading about fountain pens, you might know that ebonite is a very old material and a lot of vintage pens were originally all made with ebonite. What it is simply hardened sulfurized rubber, and the process of making ebonite, going from rubber to ebonite, basically makes this material very, very, very durable, which is why a lot of the pens that we have today that are vintage pens that are still available and circulating on the secondhand like vintage market are all, for the most part, ebonite, is because they don't crack as much and they are just very, very durable and they last for a long time. So a lot of the Sailor Bespoke pens are made of ebonite to begin with. The next term that I'm going to go over is Urushi. These terms are not unique to Sailor Bespoke pens. Some of them are, but Urushi is definitely not. Urushi is a lacquer. It is harvested from the sap of a tree, and these are specific trees that like grow in certain parts of Asia, so they aren't very common trees that are just found everywhere. It is a sap that's harvested from an Urushi tree and mixed with certain compounds and then applied in layers over lots of different things like pens, for example, but historically they've also been used on bowls, all sorts of lacquerware. They've been used to build temples, just basically to make things stand the test of time. So when you mix certain compounds with the tree sap from these Urushi trees and you apply them onto whatever you're trying to preserve, whether it's a pen or the facade of a building or a bowl, what happens if you let it dry in very, very humid conditions is that it becomes extremely durable, it's waterproof, and it just protects the object for a long amount of time. So this sap is a very rare commodity and it is not found everywhere, and the process of harvesting it is also quite time intensive and labor intensive, and the tree only grows to maturity like every 15 years or something like that. So basically it's a very, very special rare commodity, and being able to use it on these pens, which a lot of these Sailor Bespoke pens and a lot of fine art pens have Urushi to them, or if you see the word lacquer, that usually means Urushi. That makes this pen more special, and it also makes it more expensive. The next term that we're going to talk about is Maki-e. Maki-e in Japanese simply means sprinkled picture. So this is a special type of technique that is often used in combination with Urushi on these fine art pens. It involves applying a layer of lacquer and sprinkling some kind of gold dust or silver dust or other metal dust on top so that it dries, and then either polishing down or just leaving it to be like the finished picture. So Maki-e involves using precious metals as well as lacquer, and if you can imagine doing it on a pen, it is basically very, very fine work that takes a lot of time, a lot of care to do. So that is yet another reason why some of these pens are so expensive and hard to produce. The next term that we're talking about, the next two terms that we're going to be talking about are a little bit more Sailor specific, so Sailor Bespoke specific. The next term is King of Pen. So a lot of these Sailor Bespoke pens are Urushi and Maki-e and all of those things that we talked about, but also on a King of Pen size pen. If you don't know what that is, King of Pen is basically Sailor's largest pen model. It also comes with Sailor's largest gold nib. It's a 21 karat gold nib, and it's on the largest pen that Sailor has to offer. So this nib that comes on this very big pen is a very, very soft, expressive nib that's available in 21 karat. That's something that Sailor is the only company that really does it, 21 karat nibs. So that's what King of Pen means. It means it's a really big pen, Sailor's biggest pen, with Sailor's biggest and softest gold nib that it has to offer. The next term is Naginata-Togi. So this is a pretty unique to Sailor term as well, although there are other companies that are starting to do Naginata-like grinds. Naginata-Togi is one of Sailor's specialty nib grinds. It was released in 1991 along with about seven total other specialty nib grinds that Sailor released at the same time. And Naginata-Togi is named after a sword that was used a long time ago by noblemen. It means it's an upturned sword, and this nib is ground for Japanese character writing. So the modern grind today is not really upturned like this. It more just has like a triangular base at the tipping. It's like an inverted triangle. Because of that triangular base, character writing is more expressive, and you're able to achieve basically really thick and really thin strokes depending on the angle that you hold your pen. So the Naginata-Togi is something that comes on some of these Sailor Bespoke nibs, and in some cases it's even a King of Pen Naginata-Togi, which makes the pen that much more special. So that's what a Naginata-Togi is, if you didn't know that already. The next thing that I'm talking about in the Glossary of Terms is not so much a term, but if you're reading about one of these pens and you see an artist name, then that means that this pen that you're reading about is only made by one artist. Sailor is only exclusively working with one Urushi artist, Maki-e artist, or whatever other artist to produce this pen. And if it's just one person making the pen, usually they are only able to make less than 100. So it's less than 100 pieces available of this pen, because any more than that, well, that would be impossible for one person to produce, really. So if you are reading about a pen and you just see one artist name associated with the pen, that makes this pen extremely limited. Not all of these Sailor Bespoke pens are just made by one artist. Some of them are made by a group of artists. So if you don't see one particular artist associated with the pen, that pen will tend to be a little bit less rare. So it will be maybe a few hundred pieces versus something that only has 80 pieces or 50 pieces that is in the Sailor Bespoke pen program. Okay, and lastly are just other special materials. So this is not really a special term at all. I don't really need to define, but other special materials that might make some of these pens more collectible, more expensive, more special are wood. Certain types of wood have been used. There's been ebony wood used in some of these Sailor Bespoke pens, and then some commemorative woods have been used in other pens. There are silver pens, and then just other special materials that might make this pen a little bit more collectible. And there you have it. Those are all of the terms that we're gonna go over today. I hope that with these terms, you will be able to understand these pens a little bit better. And I hope that as we look at some of these examples in the next part of this video, you'll be listening out for some of those terms, and it might help you make sense of why some of these pens are a little bit more expensive than other pens in the same collection, just because they have more of those layers of special things applied to the pen. Okay, so in this next part of the video, I've picked out a few examples of Sailor Bespoke pens that are all pretty unique, and some of them are at very different price points. There's a big range of price points, and we're just gonna look at some of the qualities of each of these pens and discuss what makes each one a little bit unique and why people would want to collect this particular pen. All right, so I have two trays of pens here in front of me. These are some of the Sailor Bespoke pens here, and then in this tray here, I have some more Sailor Bespoke pens. And I've kind of organized them by the artist pens and the non-artist pens. So we talked a little bit in the video before about how some pens are made by just one particular artist. Well, that would would be these pens here. So that would mean that these are highly limited pens, and I'll give you an example of some of them. So these, for example, on the left group here are Sailor Wabi Sabi 1 and Wabi Sabi 2 pens. These, each of them, are labeled with a number, and they are out of 88. So each one of these pens only has 88 pieces produced worldwide, and you know automatically now that that means that they are really made just by one artist. So that's why they're numbered, and that's why they are so rare and so collectible. Same goes for this pen, for example, which is a pen that's made by a single artist, and there's only about 50 pieces of this available globally, I believe. These are Sailor Ray series. There's Sailor Ray 1 and then Ray 2, which we only have one piece left of. And these are, you know, Sailor didn't say exactly how many they produced, but we were only given one of each of these pens when they first came out, which is how you know they're also very, very limited. These as well are made by one artist. These are the new Sailor Bespoke pens. They're called Nawate, and we can talk a little bit more about them later. But that's just an example of the artist and how if each pen is really solely made by one artist, then that will go a long way into making it very, very unique, very collectible, and also these pens tend to have a little bit of a higher price tag associated with them than the pens that are just made by artists in general. All right, so the first pen that we're going to look at up close will be the 1911 King of Pen Black Ebonite Gold Trim and Silver Trim. So I hope some of those terms are already sticking out to you. We have a King of Pen Ebonite pen. So these are ebonite, so we know that it's that hardened rubber, and it's interesting, ebonite has a very unique feel to it. I almost feel like these pens are a little bit softer feeling. People say that they also feel warmer as well, and they kind of hold the warmth of your hand a little bit more. Something else that's cool about ebonite is that over time with use, ebonite changes color. So this pen will go from being this dark lustrous black to almost like a brown with time, and it will lose some of its really, really shiny properties and just become kind of more dull, and you'll really be able to feel the difference at that point when it's worn in a little bit more. So as I was saying, this is a 1911 King of Pen Black Ebonite. So this is a King of Pen nib. It's Sailor's largest nib with 21 karat gold, and it comes with a black ebonite body. So this is kind of a special reason just for being Sailor's largest pen and Sailor's biggest nib on a black ebonite body, and that is why some people would want to collect this nib. Some people really, really love that King of Pen soft nib to write with. Next, I'm going to talk about this pen here, and you will probably wonder what the difference is between these pens, but the name will give it away. So this now is a 1911 King of Pen Naginata-Togi Black Ebonite. So in every way, it's identical to this pen that we just talked about here. It's a King of Pen 1911. It has a black ebonite barrel and cap, so the materials are the same, but what's different here is that not only is it a King of Pen nib, it's actually a King of Pen Naginata nib. So this nib is hand ground by nib specialists at Sailor, and it has a special tipping which allows for very, very expressive character writing. And that is why this pen is a collectible one for sure. And another reason why, if you're looking at this pen versus this pen, they might look the same to you, but the price points are going to be quite different. All right, the next pen that we're gonna look at on this tray is this one here. This I thought was a really interesting example of a special material being used on a pen. This pen is called the Hiroshima Factory Commemorative Fountain Pen, and it's made of Juniperus Chinensis. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but this pen has a really cool story behind it. So as you can see, it's made of wood, and what it is that Sailor was rebuilding its factory in Hiroshima, and they had to basically make room for some of the construction, and they had to bring down all these trees that were on the old property. So what they did with the trees here was they actually turned them into the fountain pen barrels that are on these pens today. So some of these barrels are darker wood, some of these are lighter wood, and obviously the grain of each one is a little bit different. I was shocked by just how smooth these are. I don't know, that was something I wasn't expecting. So the main thing that's special about this pen here is just the material of the body. It has a 21 karat nib, but it is not a king of pen size nib, and it does have some special engravings on it, but other than that, it is simply the Sailor 21 karat nib, not the king of pen nib. So if this pen is really only special because of the materials of the body, you can expect that this one is going to be like a little bit more of an affordable one compared to some of these Ebonite king of pen Naginata-Togi pens that we're talking about today. But it was still designated a Sailor Bespoke pen because it was limited to 500 pieces globally. So it makes it a limited production pen. And you know, once you run out of the wood from those trees, you're not going to be making any more of these pens. So they are limited in that way. And a lot of limited pens are numbered, and this one is 2. This particular one is 246 out of 500. The next pens that we're going to talk about are the ones I briefly went over before. These are the Sailor Wabi Sabi 1 and Sailor Wabi Sabi 2 pens. They're available in red and green. So you can't tell from the names of these, but if you were reading about these pens, the Sailor Wabi Sabi 1 and the Sailor Wabi Sabi 2 are both Urushi lacquer pens. So they're covered in Urushi lacquer, and the material of the pen here is special as well. These are made out of ebony, so they actually feel different from the other pens because they are made out of wood. So it's like a lighter feeling, I would say, and almost like more of like a hollow feeling. And the nature of the Wabi Sabi you can really see is expressed along the body of these pens. They are rough to the feel. They almost feel like stones to me. It's very, very cool the way they've been finished. And I particularly love this matte light green one with these sort of sprinkles of gold dust along the barrel and the cap. These pens are limited as well to 88 pieces globally. So these are highly limited pens, very rare. And then something else, even though it's not in the name, is a king of pen nib. So as you can see, it has the large oversized king of pen nib, and that is something for sure that makes this pen a little bit more collectible. Well, as well as the obviously very unique finish. I kind of think this is so cool how unique it is and how much it really looks like and feels like a stone. So those are the Sailor Wabi Sabi 1 and Wabi Sabi 2. And you can imagine it has Urushi, it has Ebonite, and it has a king of pen size nib, as well as it being very, very limited, attributed to the fact that it's just made by one artist. So these do come with a higher price tag. The next pen that I want to share are these pens. These are the Sailor Nawate. These are new, these are just released, and they are really kind of special and unique compared to a lot of other pens that I've seen, compared to Namiki pens, to other Urushi pens, other lacquer pens, Maki-e pens. So I wanted to go over these. So available in 3 colors, there's the silver, the gold, and this red one, reddish one, this bronzish one. These are also made by just a single artist making all of these. So they are very rare as well. I don't have the number of pieces that are produced here, but they definitely are very rare. And they have this unique silhouette as well. If you look closely, the cap of this pen has a raised edge like this. And this is what gives this pen its name. It's called Nawate because in Japanese, Nawate means like a long straight road. And this has been built into the cap like this so that you can easily uncap the pen. You have something to like push your finger against when you're uncapping the pen. But I also think it works as kind of like a pen stop. So it works to kind of prevent your pen from rolling off your desk, which is a nice touch as well. Now, these pens are Ebonite and they are also Urushi, but with layers of gold foil or silver foil layered into them. The manufacturing of these pens is very cool, actually. Layers of Urushi are applied to begin with, and then there is gold dust or silver dust sprinkled along the barrel and cap of these pens, and the dust is allowed to absorb into the urushi, and then it's followed up by the application of these pieces of foil. So hopefully you can see on the camera that there is this appearance of sort of like a rocky, like a road, like a paved road or something in this pen. Well, that's the pieces of gold foil that are applied to the surface of the pen. You can see here. And it just gives it this very unique look. The surface of the pen is very, very smooth. So, you know, don't think that you can feel those bumpy gold foil pieces that have been inlaid into the pen because they've been polished down, so it feels very, very smooth. But I just thought this was a very unique pen. I haven't seen any lacquer pens that really look quite like this. Okay, the last pen that we're going to be looking at today close up is this one here. This is the 1911 King of Pen Maki-e Horse in the Moonlight pen. So let's take a closer look. So right off the bat, you hear a bunch of different glossary terms. As I said, the name of the pen. It's King of Pen size, which means that it's an oversized pen, Sailor's largest pen, and also comes with Sailor's largest nib, the King of Pen nib. This one actually happens to be bicolor as well, which is, you know, some people love that. So it's a 1911 King of Pen Maki-e pen. So Maki-e, if you remember, means sprinkled picture. And that's what explains the technique behind this artwork that has been applied to the surface of this pen. This pen is called Horse in the Moonlight, and it's an annual series that Sailor releases every single year of different animals in the moonlight. And this one that they've chose to feature this year is Horse in the Moonlight. So let's talk about this pen because I see a lot of special things about this pen. So obviously there's the Maki-e, which speaks to the artwork that's all over the barrel and the cap of this pen. The type of Maki-e also makes it very, very special. This Maki-e is not just any flat Maki-e, it's a raised Maki-e. So you can actually feel the clouds on this pen, you can feel the horse on this pen, you can feel the leaves that are drawn into this pen, and they're raised. So it's called Togidashi Taka Maki-e. And that's what that means, is that these images are raised, they're brought up. Some types of Maki-e are performed by burnishing down the layers after sprinkling on the dust, but the raised images are achieved using many, many layers of lacquer and charcoal dust and just applied many, many times to achieve this sort of raised portrayal of these images. So I'm not only seeing that, but I am seeing some of this dusty sprinkled in Maki-e. This is called Tokidashi Maki-e. So this is another layer. All of these different layers of artwork would have had to be applied in different steps, and you have to wait a long time in between each one to dry completely before moving on to the next. So I'm just seeing a lot of layers of work and effort here in this pen. And then of course there is this big shiny moon, which is a very large piece of radin or abalone shell. The inside shiny part of an abalone shell has been used here to complete this image of the moon. So, and I'm seeing a really big piece, which typically means that the pen would have had to be carved into in order to put this piece in, as opposed to these small pieces, which can just be applied to the surface of the pen. So all of this combined with the fact that there's just one artist that made this pen, I'm seeing their signature here, and I'm seeing that this is number 35 out of 50 pieces globally, and the fact that it's a king of pen, you know that this is going to be probably one of the most expensive pieces out of all the pieces that we talked about today. Okay, so there you have it. I hope you enjoyed today's video where we talked about Sailor Bespoke pens, defined what they were. Generally, they're just really limited pens that have some handmade aspects to them or have special materials built into the bodies or have a combination of all of these things. And we also talked about a glossary of terms that will help you understand Sailor Bespoke pens and hopefully just fine art pens a little bit better in general. And lastly, we looked at some examples of Sailor Bespoke pens at different price points and talked about why some of them are so much more expensive than others, why exactly that is, and how Sailor comes up with these prices. It might seem random, but it actually is not if you really look at the amount of time and labor that goes into some of these pens. I hope this video helps you understand a little bit more about the Sailor Bespoke pens. Before we carried Sailor Bespoke pens, I've always wondered about the Sailor Urushi Maki-e pens because they do tend to be a little bit more elusive. A lot of them are so limited, and once one design sells out, you just don't see it ever again. So it's not like Pilot Namiki where they're producing the same ones over and over again. They are very cool in that way, and I hope this video helps to demystify some of these really beautiful collectible Sailor pens. Let us know in the comments what you think of these pens. Are they way too expensive for you, or do you have your eye on one of them? Let us know what you're thinking, and thank you so much for watching. Bye!